My 34 male, life could have been okay growing up, except that my parents wanted to be good people, so they became foster parents. That was noble of them. Those kids needed help. The downside was that I got ignored. I got less attention than those kids because I was independent and didn't need the help. Gifts from my grandparents became gifts for the family. My grandparents stopped that by not buying me gifts but taking me out instead. I got to go see movies and get taken out for meals and weekend trips with my grandparents. My dad's folks took me to Disneyland, and my mom's mom and dad took me to NYC. My parents tried to get the money from this stuff given to me to them instead. I begged my grandparents not to do that. I left the house when I was 17. I graduated early and got into a trade. My grandfather was in the union and he got me in. I've been at it for 17 years and I'm doing okay. My parents are not. They ran themselves ragged taking in all these kids. Even the money they got wasn't enough to make up for their sacrifices. They've asked me for help and I said no. If I give them money, I know they'll just waste it on these kids that they took in after I left. I told them that they had a plethora of foster kids that they could ask for money. My mom said she was disappointed in me and thought she had raised me better. I said I raised myself from about 8 years old onward. My grandparents are tapped out too. My parents already owed them a lot of money. My wife says she understands how I feel, but thinks I'm being mean. My mom thinks I've held a grudge since childhood. I refuse to speak with my father, but I assume he's still giving my old things to the new kids. They're welcome to spend all their time and money on anything they want. My money's for my family. Am I the idiot for telling my parents to ask their foster children for help instead of me? Not the idiot. Your parents ignored you and tried to take money from you. You're not holding a grudge from childhood. You're simply recognizing a pattern that they never made you a priority. They were irresponsible in their financial planning by taking in so many kids. That's not your problem. Tell your wife, I don't think you're being mean. You don't want to be taken advantage of. You are not holding a grudge from childhood. Yes, he is. OP resents his parents for abandoning him. That's a grudge. Slightly, you are the idiot. You, of course, are not obligated at all to give them money, and I would not if I were you. But saying that they would waste it on their current foster children is idiot-ish, in my opinion. It might seem like a waste to you, but it's not to them, or to the children who can't help their circumstances. Never loan money that you can't afford to completely forfeit. It isn't OP's job to support them in their kindness. I think an honest conversation with the wife is in order. He had already lost a large chunk of his childhood because his parents prioritized the foster kids. Now he's mean for not sacrificing his adulthood too? A question I like to ask myself is, to what end? If they cannot afford to continue fostering, the solution is not to borrow money from you or their parents, but to stop fostering, at least until they get their situation under control. P.S. You're not being mean. You're just not being a doormat. Honestly, the fostering is kind of irrelevant to this particular request from them. Giving money to people who are bad with money does nothing to solve their money problems. They will still be crap with their money and will just come back asking for more, as evidenced by how they treated your grandparents and drained their coffers. A quick cash fix will solve zero problems for your parents if they're going to be irresponsible with it anyway. As my husband likes to say, if they need a loan, they can get one from a financial institution, not us. Good job setting boundaries. They need to grow the F up and learn how to budget like the rest of the adult world has to. My daughter, Aria, a young teen, has been best friends with Lila, a female of the same age, since they went to the same preschool together. They're always spending time together and have a bigger group of friends, but they know each other the longest and are the closest to each other. Lila's family situation is a little difficult. Her mom went a little crazy on me last week, which led to a conflict. To sum up the current problem, Lila has a blended family: her mom, stepdad, step-siblings, and half-siblings. Lila has expressed that she doesn't feel close to them. She always emphasizes that she has no real siblings, and that even her half-siblings are just half-siblings, and they're not her dad's kids either. I've heard her tell Aria how much it bugs her when people say that her step and half-siblings are just siblings, but they don't talk about it too often. Lila's mother showed up at my house last week and blamed Aria for Lila's use of the step and half terms. She said she heard the girls talk about it, and they say step and half siblings aren't real siblings. She said she knew that must have come from Aria because she had been fighting Lila for years to stop saying step and half. I asked her how that even made sense. She told me Aria must be the source, and I told her Lila says that whether Aria's around or not, and she's wrong to blame Aria for how Lila feels. Lila's mother then told me I should be watching over the girls whenever they're in my home or my presence, and correcting Lila whenever she uses step, half, or says they're not her real family. I told Lila's mother she couldn't seriously expect me to listen to them 24/7 so I could correct Lila, and it's too much for her to expect me to do when her kid is over here to play with mine. She was not happy with me at all. She told me I couldn't say Aria wasn't to blame, and in the same breath, refused to correct Lila when she said something wrong. She told me I just want to let them get away with saying stuff and that I don't do enough for Lila, even though Lila spends more time in my house than she does at her own. In the same breath, Lila's mother said her husband is so sick of Lila refusing to cooperate there, and she needs to be here much more so I can correct her. I told her she really was expecting too much. She told me I was a witch and a crappy person. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. The girl is a teenager. She knows the terminology. Nobody needs to plant seeds in her head when it comes to how she views her family dynamics. Lila's mom is way off base. It's unreasonable to expect you to constantly monitor their conversation and correct Lila's language. Blaming Aria is unfair. Lila's feelings about her family are likely the root cause. Just because mommy wants to pretend that they're one big happy family, the truth is that the daughter clearly feels differently. More importantly, the daughter's correct in using half and step. Why would she be admonished for speaking the truth? Honestly, if I were the daughter, I would correct anyone who referred to them as brothers and sisters. I'm glad you provided Lila with a safe space, because sadly, she doesn't have one at home. My husband and I have an infant daughter. She's breastfed. She currently has 4 teeth coming in at once. She's been biting the absolute heck out of me when nursing, at least 3 to 4 times a day. A few days ago, she made me bleed. My husband thinks it's hilarious despite seeing me in absolute excruciating pain. When I get angry and stop a nursing session and walk off, he says things like, "She's just a baby," using baby talk and following me with the baby, and says things like, "Oh no, is mama mad at the poor baby? It's not the poor baby's fault, is it, sweetie?" Every single time I walk away. Usually he follows it up with, "Aw, how can mommy be mad at you? Who can be mad at that face?" And for clarification, I'm not angry at my daughter. She is a baby, and she's teething. But he's a grown darn man who finds his wife's extreme pain to be hilarious. This has been going on for nearly a month. She cut 2 teeth prior to this, and the same thing happened. Every single time she bites me, he starts laughing. Not just a chuckle, straight up knee slap laughing. I've told him many times to stop laughing because she latches on harder whenever he does. She now thinks it's a game. He keeps saying he'll stop and that he's sorry, but that it's just so funny. It's caused fights because there's literally nothing funny about me being in this much physical pain, and I think he's messed up in the head to find it funny. And no, he isn't like this regarding anything else. He really just thinks that everything our daughter does is cute or funny. So this morning we're lying in bed. I co-sleep, bassinet that hooks up to the bed. She bit me hard. Nothing I did stopped it. I pulled her face into my breast to get her to unlatch, but it didn't work. I hooked my finger in her mouth to try to get her to unlatch. She bit down harder. I even flicked her cheek, obviously not hard, hoping it would startle her to make her let go. Nope, she starts smiling instead. Why? Because my husband is sitting in bed hyena laughing while watching me struggle with tears in my eyes. She finally pulled back while still biting and pulled back enough to make her unlatch. It really hurt. He's still laughing. And I don't know what came over me, but I reached over and pinched a hold of his nipple as hard as I possibly could. And I squeezed, and I refused to let go until he physically slapped my hand away. Through gritted teeth, I said, "I told you to stop laughing when she does that. Do it again, and I'm gonna rip your darn nipple off." He's now calling me a darn psycho and says that he can't trust being around me for his own safety because I'm apparently abusive. Nope. Baby has absolutely learned this is a game by Dad's reaction. When my babies bit me while feeding, I involuntarily jumped and yelped, "Ow!" They each only did it 2 to 3 times before they stopped because they didn't get any positive reinforcement of the behavior. Your idiot hubby is teaching your child to bite you. If I were you, I'd refuse to nurse with him in the same room. He's effectively causing you harm, and he's sabotaging your breastfeeding relationship with your child. Not teaching, he's taught your child to do this. He should be so very ashamed. I'm petty and would be carrying clamps to get him when he laughs at my pain. Screw him, to be honest. That's real idiot behavior. My firstborn had a deep latch, and it made breastfeeding excruciating, period. My husband never laughed. He'd rub my back, bring me a drink, take the baby, or do anything to help me. This is divorceable to me. How someone treats you while you're pregnant and in the postpartum period is telling and worthy of reaction. My sister and her 2 kids moved in with us after she was facing homelessness after being evicted from her place. She's become very clingy with me. I must repeatedly tell her, my wife and I are not watching your kids. We gave you a place to stay. We must constantly remind her to clean up after her and her children and not let her kids destroy things. She's been envious of my wife if I go out. She's been envious if my wife and I go out, and has made comments like that it must be nice if my wife buys new clothes or something designer. She's been repeatedly talked to about this and told to stop. Last night, my wife and I went on a date night to go out and see a live show and get sushi. My sister was waiting up for us close to 1 a.m. and yelled at us about how we didn't bring her kids something, how it's so mean that we flaunt our lifestyle while her kids are struggling, and the least we could do is bring her and her kids home something. It's 1 a.m. Her kids aren't even awake. My sister said she deserves a little treat from time to time and more say around the home. My wife flips on her and tells my sister she needs to move out ASAP. She doesn't want her toxic butt in her home anymore, and if she's not out in 30 days, she will be getting the courts and child services involved to remove them from the home. And my wife told my sister how she's a mentally unstable, unfit mother. My sister acted like I would protect her, and she called my wife a witch and said I wouldn't let that happen. I told my sister my wife could do as she wanted and that it was her home too. My sister's the one who made herself unwelcome. My sister didn't apologize but made us breakfast this morning, and my wife threw the plate of food away and told my sister, 29 days. My wife left to go speak to one of her cousins, who's a lawyer, this morning. My sister acted all innocent in front of her kids, who could tell their aunt's attitude was off. My sister tried apologizing to me after my wife left, and I told her that it was probably too late because my wife was getting the official paperwork now. Deserves treats? For what? Being a leech? Does she even have a job or pay you rent or utilities, etc.? Or offer to cook and clean, do chores around the house, etc.? It doesn't sound like it, as she has to constantly be reminded to clean up after herself and the kids. Sounds like she lounges around, expecting to be waited on like a queen, while ignoring her kids destroying the house. Where are their fathers? Shouldn't they also be caring for them and paying child support? I completely understand your wife snapping and evicting her. Not the idiot. Your sister's actions have created a toxic environment in your home, and it's valid that your wife wants her gone. Your wife has every right to set boundaries and feel safe and respected in her own home. Your sister's behavior has been consistently ungrateful, disrespectful, and manipulative. I wouldn't be surprised if the sister actually thought that she would get away with calling the wife a witch and thought, this is it. They get divorced, and now he can take care of us. Where does your sister get her absurd sense of entitlement? It sounds almost like you two came from different sets of parents. I have no doubt this was 100% her thought process. I agree with your wife. 29 days is my new favorite burn. Your wife is a gem. And by the way, your sister is not sorry. She's just trying to save her butt. If you let her stay, the same scenario will continue soon. My brother and I share a car. It's not all his fault, but the car isn't clean in the slightest. More by him than me. It isn't that disgusting, but the seats are old and sort of stained, and we have our backpacks and schoolwork scattered in the back. One of our chores is taking our stepsister to softball practice. Usually my brother does it because I'm at practice for my sport when hers start, but I had an off day while my brother was taking a nap, so I had to take her. My stepdad said I could take his car if I wanted to, but I wanted to drive mine. When I pulled it up, my stepsister refused to get in because it was so dirty. I told her to get over it, but she kept refusing. And I guess my brother has been taking our dad's car whenever he takes her to practice. She kept annoying me about how gross the car was and refusing to get in, and I just had enough. This is where I might be the idiot. I told her to ask her dad for a ride and drove off because I had places to be too. About 5 minutes later, my dad called me and was angry, saying that I was too old to be acting this way and that I should have just taken his car. I told him the car wasn't that bad and she was overreacting, but he didn't want to hear it and wasn't happy. I'm just confused by this whole mess and wondering what others think. Am I the idiot? If your car is actually a biohazard and you're too much of a teenage male who doesn't comprehend how gross he is to realize it, then you're the idiot. If your stepsister's just a pretentious teenage girl who thinks she deserves to be driven around in style and doesn't want to be seen in an embarrassing but otherwise acceptable car, then you're not the idiot. We need info to decide. How old is your stepsister? Can you describe the state of the car? Did it smell bad? Or could it have stained her clothes? She's a young teen just entering high school, and the car isn't that clean, but nothing that would stain clothes, and a little smell, but the windows were going to stay down. My brother refuses to clean it at all and thinks it's not bad in the slightest. I'm not deep cleaning a car. It's more his fault than myself. Would have kept the windows down? What? That's not her being pretentious. That's the boys being gross. If the car smells and you have to put the windows down, that's disgusting. I think you're old enough to clean your darn car. You're both incredibly immature. Act your age and clean the darn car. You both drive it. You both clean it. You are the idiot, and so is your brother. I don't know a polite way to say this, so I'm gonna just have to be blunt, honey. That car belongs to two teenage boys. It's summertime. Teenage boys typically smell, and spray deodorants don't help. If the stink is noticeable to you, I guarantee you that it will curl the average person's nose, especially a teenage girl. Clean your car, and just in case one of you doesn't do this, shower daily, and don't think the spray deodorant will help you avoid that. It doesn't. This goes for any other young men reading this.